Hello, everyone, and I'm so excited to introduce my dear friend Monique, who I met in Costa Rica. We met when I was volunteering at Peace Retreat, and she would come to Peace Retreat for yoga classes. We connected on Instagram after our very brief meeting. I think we met maybe like 2 or 3 times. I mean, we passed each other in class, and then we had one longer conversation. But we've kind of kept in touch with each other over social, and you've been such a huge kind of like inspiration to me. You're like one of those people who's, I feel like, a few steps forward in their journey of this, I don't know, freedom or self-discovery. And you have so much wisdom. So I totally look up to you. In terms of Monique's like story, I'll just give a little bit background from what I know. She was working in corporate for a long time, or in the financial industry, and she sold her home and 90% of her belongings, and decided to hit the road and travel the world. 2 suitcases and a laptop, I think, was your initial hashtag. And then, you ended up going on this big journey, and you've had all these travels and healings, and you've studied yoga nidra and restorative yoga and Reiki. And yeah, you're just a super inspirational person. And I know that you've also founded the Flourishment Collective, which we can talk about a little bit. And you're working with the startup Homes to Zero. So there's just so many things that you're doing, and there's it's really inspirational. And like, I have so many questions to ask about your journey, and I just want you to know how much I appreciate you and look up to you as someone who is a pioneer, who has the courage to live this life and to commit, to do all the things that you're doing.
Incredible. Thank you. What a wonderful introduction, Asya. And I'm really excited to have a chance to chat with you, because we did meet over a year ago now, November 2021 it was. And I've been really inspired by your journey. I love following your travels on Instagram and seeing all the things you're doing. So I'm excited about our conversation and catching up. It's amazing.
Yes. So, I mean, like, what started this whole kind of healing journey, or this journey to self? I don't know what you want to call it, but what was the impetus? Like, what was the kind of thing that like was like, okay, I have to make a change in my current life?
Mm-hmm. I would say it started in 2019. I was on a wellness tour with my daughter, who was 14 at the time. And we went to Bali, and we spent 10 days going to temples, meditating, doing yoga. And by the end of that trip, I was sitting by the ocean and thinking about the experience and breathing deeply. And I realized I was breathing deeply. And I realized I had not been able to breathe deeply for most of my career. Taking a deep breath in was painful. And I could see that you're breathing as I'm telling this story. I had pain in my chest when I would breathe, because I was carrying anxiety in my chest every day. But the strange thing is, I didn't really realize I was just living with it. And so that was the moment I made the decision to find a way to live a life where I could breathe deeply every day and have peace of mind. So I went on this journey of learning and healing for myself. And that really was the impetus, or the beginning of it.
I feel like so many people struggle with that, and they're so disconnected from their bodies that they don't even know that they're not breathing. So, like, did it take going to Bali to like realize that you were just like shallow? Was it like shallow breathing, and like, what advice can you give to someone who is like, I think I do that? Like, what, what should I do if I am doing that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you're right about being disconnected. I think that I had a great career. I was a successful professional working at a bank, and I loved my job. But it was very fast paced. And I think it was the act of slowing down that I realized that was the kind of when I started connecting with my body and how I was feeling. And so my advice to people is to put some practices in place to slow down so that you can hear that inner voice. You can take a deep breath, start to slow down life a little bit to process what's happening in your life and in your mind and in your heart. And I think because, so many of us have this fast-paced go, go, go life. I know certainly for me, I wasn't making the time to reflect on what was affecting me. And there was a lot of stress in my life, and I was just pushing through it every day. So yeah, I guess it was shallow breathing. It was, not being able to take a deep breath in without feeling pain. So that is, all the practices that have helped me with my healing have been all about slowing things down.
Beautiful. So, what are some slow down practices that if someone's like listening to this and they're like, well, that sounds great, but I don't know even where to start. I love bringing kind of your journey and making it super practical and applicable, because like that's the way that I learn, is like looking at someone else and trying to say, okay, like how can I implement this today,
I think a lot of people with the pandemic found the gift that the forest can bring to us and how nature can be so healing. I know that I was in Canada during the pandemic, and a lot of people found the forest and time outdoors their salvation, really, because we could be outside. And that's when I discovered forest therapy. And I think it is a whole practice. Like some people are saying, forest therapy is the new yoga. It is very new and emerging, but there are a lot of healing benefits to even just going for a walk in the forest. And there's science behind that. So, you feel good after you've been outdoors. And there's a reason for that. Things like there's something called phytoncides. So phytoncides are things that trees produce. They're chemicals that trees produce to fight off disease. So as you're walking through a forest, you're actually breathing in phytoncides that help boost your immune system.
Amazing.
Yeah, and even the color green, it's the easiest color for your eyes to process. The sounds of birds, when you hear birds singing, it's, through our evolution, the bird's song sends us a message that you're safe when you hear birds singing. And so there's all these things. I always say nature is conspiring to make us well. And so that would be probably one of the easiest things, no cost, very accessible. Just go for a walk. It's a really good place to start.
And is there any practices that one should do when they're walking? I mean, I think that you can walk and be on your cell phone and be distracted or speed racing, or how should we walk what are tips and tricks to implement when we are walking to have more of this like healing energy kind of come? Because I know that I've hiked and I love trail running and going super fast. And whenever I listen to you talk about forest therapy, it's like about being like super mindful and slow and deliberate and like listening to the trees. And so can you expand a little bit about like the way in which to do this?
That's a really, really good point. We are trained as forest therapy guides to help people experience nature in a mindful way. A typical forest therapy walk takes about 3 hours, and we might walk 1 mile, 1.5 miles. So you're not going very far, but you're going very slow, and you might spend 20 minutes just looking at the veins in a leaf. If you look at the veins in the leaf, it's very similar to the veins in your hands. And nature can be a mirror. So when you slow down and really just connect with nature in that way, you might look at the patterns on bark. You know, the fractal patterns or something else are very soothing. But if you're just going for a run or bike ride, you're going to miss all of that. And so that's what forest therapy is about. And I remember when I came out of the forest after my training, we do an 8-day immersive training. I experienced going outdoors in a very different way. Because like you, I used to love hiking and, you know, being out on the trails, but I wasn't noticing what was around me. And I remember that, you know, shortly after my training, I was out and finding a tree I wanted to sit and spend some time with. And I saw these beautiful cranes. This was in downtown Toronto. Beautiful cranes, like those huge birds sitting in stillness in kind of on an island in the middle of this river. I was on the Don River. And I remember thinking, all these people are just zooming by on their bikes and they're running. No one is seeing this bird. And it's kind of really did hit me that we're missing so much of life by not slowing down. So I think one suggestion I would have, you know, just as far as something really practical and easy to do, is just find a spot that you're drawn to. It might be, you know, a beautiful place where the sun is shining, or where you have a really nice view. Make yourself comfortable and sit there for 20 minutes. And then open up all your senses, one sense at a time. What do you smell? What do you see? What do you hear? What do you hear close to you? What are the sounds that you hear that are furthest away? And what do you feel? You can feel the breeze on your skin. And as you do this one sense at a time, you slowly start to open up and notice all of the beauty all around you. It's a really beautiful practice. The other thing we invite people to do is sit with a tree. It's called meeting with a tree. And you have a conversation with a tree that you're drawn to. And again, just sit at its base. You can ask the tree a question. And when you do this for a while, you begin to feel the energy of the tree. You know, and I've had many people have really profound experiences just sitting with the tree in silence and basically, you know, having a connection and a conversation. So it is about, it's not just even slowing down, it's completely stopping.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah. Like I always feel like with trees specifically, I always think about how much they witness, like as, I don't know, I think they have consciousness, you know, and like they stand, you know, like, and they see and they witness so much. And so, do you find that the tree, like each tree has its own, like it's its own conscious, like would you be attracted to one tree more than another? And like, how do you, you know, like connect with?
Yeah, it's just, you know, big part of it is just noticing what you're noticing. You know, it's part of that. We talked about that disconnection that we often feel. It's the pleasure of being in the forest, and it's the pleasure of noticing what you're drawn to. And it might be your body physically, it might be your eyes, what you see, or it might be what you sense. So there's no one way to do it. It's you're trusting your own intuition to kind of find the tree that you want to spend some time with. I almost feel like, well, I don't want to say almost, I actually have trees that I'm friends with. And when I go to different places, I like to go and visit those trees. And, you know, honestly, it sounds kind of crazy, but, you know, I've hugged trees and have had this feeling that you're hugging a human. Like it's really so magical.
Wow, so beautiful. I'm a tree hugger too, and I feel very much the same way. And now I've left all my trees that I've visited for years and years in Central Park. You know, I would go to these photo shoots, and so yeah, I was. This is the first spring that I'm not seeing the trees and being with them. So
yeah, isn't that amazing? How you can build a relationship with other
Totally.
beings. Yeah, and we refer to it as the more than human world or the other human world. And if you believe that everything has an essence, you're connecting with that essence.
I love that. I love that.
Mhm.
All right. Anyway, I want to move the conversation forward to talk about the flourishment thing that you've started and what
Mhm.
that is. And I know, like, when I was packing up my life and everything like that, I think you had sent me your podcast. You said once you start your road trip, you can listen to this, and I did. And that podcast episode that you sent me totally inspired me on my hiking. And you were saying, nourish the soul, flourish in life. And I think that, when we're busy in our lives, sometimes we are so disconnected from what is nourishing for our soul. So how do we reconnect to find what that is? Because, like, what if you don't know? You're just in your life and you're just so unaware of, where you are. So how do you start to connect
Mhm.
to figure out what those things are?
Yeah, I started this whole journey actually a decade ago with a very simple exercise called making a happy list, and making a list of all of the things that bring joy into your life. And it might be having your that first cup of coffee in the morning. It might be, for me, it was because I had my daughter, and then I just lost myself along the way. And I think this happens to a lot of parents where they're so busy raising their children that they forget about themselves. And so for me, my list was listening to some of my favorite music, which I had stopped doing. So I created a playlist just to listen to it. I call it the Moji playlist, and it's all my favorite songs. Just listening to them always boosts my mood. It was spending time with friends, and it was spending time outdoors, and it was getting fit again and getting active. And by making my list and becoming aware of what were those simple things that brought joy into my life, I started carving out time for those things. And that's when everything started to shift. Because shortly after that, I was spending time hiking with friends on weekends, which led to an opportunity to join a team to do Kilimanjaro. And because I was getting fit again, I thought, yes, this checks a lot of boxes. It's time with my friends. It's active. It's a big goal. It's going to keep me motivated to, continue to get to work out and get back into shape. And from that experience led to other things in the next. And that's what happens. It led to the next and the next and the next. I think what happens as you, first of all, remember all those things that bring you joy. Think about your childhood, and when you would kind of lose track of time, what were you doing, right? Add that to your happy list. As you spend more time doing those things, you begin to shift your energy. And as you shift your energy into more positive, you're attracting more positive into your life. It just creates this positive momentum that continues to build and grow.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And yeah, it's like, it's so simple, and it's just taking that time to just reflect helps you just make the first step. And I think a lot of times it is just like making that first step, and then the momentum starts to build and help you, and it's like, you don't have to make this huge change, but you just need to, like, take the first step in changing your autopilot or whatever you've been in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you discussed that, I know that you have studied yoga nidra and Reiki, and how have these, and restorative yoga. So, like, I guess individually, how have these practices helped you? Um, did you have other issues in your body that you were trying to heal, or was it only just this, like, shortness of breath and anxiety that you were feeling, or did these restorative, the yoga nidra, restorative, and Reiki help you with other ailments that you were,
I
working?
think it was about the anxiety and getting that under control. But then as I started deepening into these practices for my own healing, it started to move into more than a spiritual journey, and then deepening my spiritual practice. So I started, I think, kind of light, right, with restorative yoga and yoga nidra, and then I did a meditation teacher training, and I did all of these things more because I wanted to learn for myself. But as I was slowing down more and more, I think, opened up an interest in some new things, which led to the force therapy training. And I think that was where I really began to feel very differently, because I felt like my eyes were open to a whole new world I didn't even realize was there. And then that led to Reiki. I had a Reiki practitioner for many, many years, Elisa, and I adore her. And she had said, you can do Reiki on yourself. And so I decided to study Reiki again for my own healing. But then I started to see how it was helpful to others as well. And I think more of my time, or my energy, was with the pandemic. I think I turned more inward. I was at home more, was going out into nature more, and less, in the corporate environment and in an office. So the more inward I went, the more these gifts, I guess I would say, began to open up. And I realized that I could help other people who were struggling with the things that I had been struggling with. So people were asking if I would take them on forced therapy walks, or if I could give them a Reiki session. And I really loved that kind of work. I started to feel very disconnected in my corporate job, and I had, was coming to the realization that it was time to leave and to do more of this. Yeah.
So on that point, I know that letting go is like a big thing that you have to do when you are transitioning. And how did you let go, and what practices, or because even that's the process that I've been going through, is literally letting go, trust and surrender, trust and surrender. So can you speak to that, and how you've kind of integrated those practices, or what practices you've integrated to allow yourself to let go of your old and draw in what that some aspect of you wants to experience?
Well, it's interesting, because you and I met right after I had left my corporate job, and I had gone from having a very full schedule every day, where I had back to back meetings. And it was a job that required a lot of control. I was managing corporate events. I was involved in designing a new corporate headquarter, with lots of challenges with the pandemic and construction delays. And it was a very interesting time, but it was all about project plans and timelines. And then, the day after I left my role, my partner and I got on a plane and came to Costa Rica. And that's when you and I met. And I had nothing in my calendar. And I had a completely open day every single day. And it was, in a way, kind of overwhelming, because I never had to think about what I was going to do in my day, because it was so scripted and, taken care of. Every day was full. So that was a big adjustment. And it took a while. I think being able to go to the Peace Retreat, or the Peace Retreat Yoga Center, was very helpful, because it gave me a little bit of structure for that month of November, to go every day for 3 hours, to have time to reflect, to have time to do yoga and meditate, and some chanting and some kriyas. It was such a beautiful gift. And so my advice to people who might be going through something like this would be to not over-program, because it is an adjustment, to that it's important to work through it, but to have something in your day that's going to be very nourishing and give you the space to figure out what your next move is going to be. You know, I really had no idea what I was going to do when I left the bank. I just knew it was time to go, and it was very, very open. And I had all these practices that I was personally very interested in, but I didn't have a business. I'd never run my own business before. So it was all new. And I just kind of took a big giant pause to just transition. And to your point, to let go control. And, you know, I would use the analogy of my entire life. I had my hands on the steering wheel. I was driving the car. I knew where that car was going. I was directing every step of the way, or every mile of the way. And when I left the bank, I let go of that steering wheel, and I was letting myself be guided to a large degree. And that was a major shift. And it's been over a year, and I'm still something I'm adjusting to. I think the pendulum has swung in the completely opposite direction now. It's, you know, it's a life that's very free and open, lots of flexibility, and I'm quite enjoying that pace as well.
So how do you craft a day when you are so free? Like, how do you figure out how you want to spend your time, or where you go, or what you do? And yeah, I think that I'm kind of feeling that right now, where I've, you know, carved out a lot of space, and I don't have stuff like that I have to do every day. So it's like, what practices help, I don't know, ground you or keep you feeling like in a good stride?
Mm-hmm. We travel a lot. You know, we started our digital nomad adventures in September, and we were moving almost every 2 weeks. And I found that exhausting, and not just exhausting, kind of discombobulating. And anyway, there's a story to tell where, you know, I was forced to basically stop. But one of the practices I find in every new place that we go is greeting the land. And what I do a lot of nature art and mandalas. And what I do is I draw in the sand a compass that points north, south, east, west. And I greet the land where I am. I like to be bare feet for this, to do some grounding or earthing at the same time. But I stand in the north, I look in the north direction, I greet the north, I thank the north. The element of earth is in the north, in the Celtic medicine wheel tradition. And then I go to the east, which is air. I go to the south, which is fire, and I go to the west, which is water. And so I greet the 4 directions and the elements, and then I stand in the center, and center is spirit. It's a beautiful way to connect to the land wherever we are. And that's probably one of the first things I do when we go to a new place. It really helps with grounding. And also, a lot of times when I'm making these mandalas, like here in Costa Rica, we've been here since January, and I've been making these mandalas on the beach. And people are curious. I've met lots of really interesting people, lots of very cool synchronicities. And the people I've met where, you know, they're curious about, what is this? What are you doing? And there was one woman who you could tell was going through a very hard time. And she joined me in the greeting of the land, and we did a bit of a meditation together. You know, the stranger who just happened to be on the beach when I was doing this, and she said it really, really helped her. So the other thing we've done is we've slowed down. We've stopped moving around so much. You know, we've been here in Costa Rica for, it will be 3 months. And I think at a minimum, I want to stay in one place for at least 2 weeks, because it is very, like I said, discombobulating and disruptive. And I like to really connect with the community where we are and the people where we are. And you can't do that if you're, moving around every week.
And how do you choose like where you're gonna go, or what countries or places? Like, I mean, the world is
Oh my
your
goodness,
oyster.
that's a very good question. I have, I can bring my laptop over to show you what I worked on the weekend. I had a friend visiting here from the Yukon, and we did this whole mind map of what I want to do from September of this coming year to spring of next year, because it was so open. And I'll just turn my laptop around here. I don't know if you can see this mirror. See the mirror with all the stick notes?
Yes.
So what that is mapping out. We started with what are the experiences I want to have? And I want to deepen my spiritual practice is a priority, and spend time with family and friends as I'm traveling around the world. So I'm going to spend 3 months in India, and starting in the north and making my way south and spending time with Tibetan monks and nuns and time in ashrams and seeing as much of India as I can. Then I go to Australia, where I'm visiting a friend, and New Zealand for a few weeks, where other friends are going to meet me. And then there's this whole Asia leg of the trip next year that is very undefined, but I feel like I'll figure it out. I don't know yet, but I think opportunities, ideas, relationships are going to emerge over the next, 6 months. That will help me put some shape around what that Asia looks like.
So inspirational. And how do you feel like, do you feel, I mean, you have a partner that you're doing it with. I do a lot of my traveling alone. And so for me, sometimes I feel like I don't necessarily, like you have like a base, another person, as well as it sounds like you're connecting with friends, but do you ever feel, I don't know, like disconnected from having like a core group of friends, or like, I mean, maybe you still do, but like, how do you balance not being, in one place
Well,
with
I
the
do
sense of
have a
community?
partner. Yeah, I do have a partner, Andrew. He is going to be sailing around the world starting September. He's doing a race. And so I will be solo traveling for those 8 to 10 months. So I'm with you. Maybe you and I will connect somewhere along the journey, which would be super fun. So it will be solo travel, and I think that's going to be really interesting, because I'll be able to do things that he might not necessarily want to do. I don't think he wants to spend 10 days in Vipassana, for example, right? But it's a nice opportunity for me to do those types of things. And just as far as staying connected with friends, it's not easy. And I think, you may find this too, as the more you do this, things start to shift in your life, and friendships might change. I know when I went home for Christmas, the conversations that I had with friends were a little bit different, and because people are into different things. And so yeah, it's interesting. I've made a real effort in staying connected with my close friends. I created a WhatsApp group with my girlfriends, and we like to share news there. I have a friend that got engaged recently, and she shared it. They were all able to celebrate together. I'll have Zoom chats with my friends and my parents. I talk to them once a week. My daughter, I talk to her a couple times a week. So I think, I think this is one of the blessings of COVID, if there is one, is that communication is so much easier now than it used to be. And so being able to stay connected with people is a lot easier than it was before we had, easy access to Zoom like this, for example.
Yes, so beautiful. So you mentioned Vipassana and how you would love to do another one. And I think you have done Vipassana in the past. And so I just wanted to hear about your experience and learn a little bit more about how that helped you on your journey.
I did my first and only Vipassana so far last January of 2022. And it was over Zoom. So normally this monastery has these events on site, the Dhammasuka monastery. But because of COVID, it was virtual. And I stayed at a friend's cabin in the woods in the middle of winter in Ontario. It was very isolated. It was actually perfect for this experience. And every day at 3:00, I had my time with the monk to talk about my meditation. And he would ask, how was your last sitting? And we would talk about the longest meditation, how long it was, and what had happened. And through those conversations, he would then give me direction on what to focus my meditation on next. And it was really hard at first, I'll be honest. It was one of those experiences like when you're watching a movie and you see the clock ticking and you feel like 20 minutes has gone by, but it's only been 10 seconds, right? It was like, at first, it just was painful how hard it was to sit in silence and stillness. But after a few days, I started really sinking into it. And by the end, I was in a meditative state the whole time, other than sleeping. Or even when I was preparing my meals, I had pre-made vegetarian meals so that I wouldn't be spending time cooking. So even just warming up my food, everything was, I'd make a cup of tea, everything was in a very meditative state. So you would either be sitting in meditation or you were walking in a slow meditative walk, and eating and sleeping. That's all I did for 10 days. And each day I went deeper and deeper and deeper. And I had a lot of really interesting experiences during those 10 days.
Do you want to share some of these? I mean, I know it could be kind of personal, so whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Well, I think one of the most profound things happened on day 5, where I was 2 hours into a meditation, roughly, and I had an entire book downloaded into my mind. It just appeared. It was just in a matter of seconds. I had 12 chapters, the title of every chapter and the title of the book was like, boom, right there. And I was so excited to start just writing this book because it was here and it was just in my mind. And when I had my chat with the monk that day, I told him about the experience and that I couldn't wait to start writing the story. And he said, you can think about your book on Sunday. And this was Wednesday when it had happened. So he, was basically saying, focus on your meditation. You can start working on your book on Sunday, which was a real test in, letting go of those thoughts and trying to stay focused on the meditation. But that was, I think, I was very excited about that. I've been working on that book for over a year now. I'm about 70% of the way in. And I've really enjoyed the process of writing. So I think, what I noticed as that week evolved was when I was out on my slow meditative walk, the colors were brighter, the sounds were louder. Again, it was similar to forest therapy, where your senses are just so fully alive that you're awake and everything is more pronounced. I had I would call it, sometimes I would call it a meninges headache, like, because your meninges are it's the sac around your brain. And then when you're in a, spending a lot of time in meditation, you're not used to it. You get this, like, you could feel like kind of like an achiness in the brain. I would call it my meninges headache. But there were, like, at one point, my arm just completely dissolved. At one point, I could see through my eyelids, even though my eyes were closed. Like, just very interesting things. There was at one point, my eyes were closed and I was in a deep meditation. And I got what I call glimpses of consciousness. And I'd had that experience once before here in Costa Rica. I'd done this very meditative labyrinth walk. There's a place here called La Senda, just outside of Tamarindo. That's a double labyrinth. And in the center of this labyrinth is a big ceiba tree. And when I put my hand on the tree, I had the same, like, glimpses of consciousness. And the only way to describe it is, and if you have like millions of images going really, really fast, high speed, black and white images, it's kind of like that kind of a sensation. So it first happened at the labyrinth, and then it happened again in one of my meditations. And I had asked the monk about that, and he explained it as glimpses of consciousness, which was kind of cool to understand what it was, because when it happened at the labyrinth, I couldn't explain what I had experienced. So probably the most profound thing, though, and it is the type of Vipassana or meditation we were doing is called loving kindness. It's TWIM meditation. And Asi, I don't know if you've done TWIM before, tranquil wisdom insight meditation. It's where you're filling yourself up with joy, and then you're radiating that joy out to the world. So after 9 days of this feeling of pure love and joy, I was just vibrating. And I don't think I'd ever felt that happy in my entire life. And I carried it with me for a long time after the Vipassana. I remember in downtown Toronto, where people don't really often, it's probably like some places in New York, or lots of big cities, people aren't looking at each other, people aren't greeting each other. And here I am, big smile on my face, just good morning, and I would get that energy back from people. And I remember this one man was walking, older man, with his friend, and I said good morning. He was so happy. He was like, good morning, good morning. He was so happy. And I just thought, this is what it's about. It's so simple, but it's like you are doing an exchange of beautiful, joyful, loving energy everywhere you go. And when you're living in the state of loving kindness, that's what you're putting out into the world. And it's a beautiful experience.
Oh, so much about that is just so beautiful. I do want to ask like the nitty gritty of it. So when you did this whole meditation experience, you went to this cabin.
Yeah.
And did they give you guidelines on like how you break up your day and techniques for the meditation? And then, or was it like kind of open-ended? Like, how did it?
There was a little bit of, I wouldn't even say, there wasn't a lot of structure, but on the Friday evening when it started, there were 12 of us from around the world, and Bhante gave us instructions, and which were sit in a chair. So it's not seated you're not sitting in a lotus position or on the floor. You're sitting in a chair, and it's all about being comfortable, because if you're sitting for 2 or 3 or 4 hours, you can't sit in that position with your legs crossed. I know I can't. My back would hurt. My legs, I wouldn't be able to stand up. So I actually quite like that he has chairs to sit on. You put your feet on the ground. You get in a comfortable position, but not too comfortable, because you don't want to fall asleep. And you close your eyes, and he gave us some instruction on what to focus your meditation on at the beginning. And so the beginning was starting to fill yourself up with joy. And there's a way of doing that. And it was, he would invite us to choose a neutral friend of the same sex. So not a family member, not someone that you're in a relationship with, but just a neutral friend that you know, and it could be somebody you care about. And that person is the focus of your meditation at the beginning, where you're filling yourself up with joy, and then you're sending that joy to that person. I did that for 3 whole days. And it was, what I loved about it was it felt like a life review in many ways of all the beautiful things that happened in my life. All those moments. And if you're spending 3 full days just remembering the good things in your life, you start to remember things you've totally forgotten about. Go way back into your childhood. And a lot of them are very simple things. I would think about beautiful places I've been, or things that I used to go canoeing with my family, and I brought all those things started to come back. So that's how you start. And you just close your eyes up. And actually a big part of what they teach are the 6 R's, which is, I'm going to try to remember what the 6 R's are, but it's relax. And if you get a distraction that comes into your mind, you just release. So you recognize that there's a distracting thought. It's taken you off of your meditation. So you're like, oh, there goes my mind again. I'm going to let that go, release, and return, refocus, re-smile. A big part of Bhante's practice was smiling. He would say, Buddha, if you look at Buddha statues, Buddha always has a little smile, right? So he'd say, have your Buddha smile, and then restart. And so at the beginning, you're just kind of going through this over and over and over and over and over again. And, when I talk to people meditation, so many of them say, oh, I can't meditate. I can't still my mind. No one can still their mind completely, even practiced monks. And that's what this exercise is. It's the thought comes in that pulls you away, and you release it, and you go back. You go back, you go back, you go back. And so the beginning of this week was a lot of, honestly, it was like every 2 seconds I would get distracted. I have to go back, fill myself up with joy, radiate that joy to my friend. And so once I don't know how, I guess he just knows the evolution of the meditation practice. He would know then when to go to the next area to focus on, and then the next. And so I went deeper and deeper and deeper, and there were instructions on how to do that. But yeah, so there was a little bit of structure, but not a lot. Like, he didn't tell us how to meditate. He told us how to release those thoughts. When we had our quick chat every day, he would be very helpful in reminding me of what to do. And there was a bit of a schedule. So we would get up at 5 a.m, meditate, have breakfast, meditate, go for a walk, have lunch before noon. And that was, you only ate before noon. So from noon till the next morning, there was no food. But you could drink tea or water throughout the day. And in the evening, and then you'd continue, meditate, walk. In the evening, you would watch a video. And these were recorded from Vipassanas that had been done at the monastery. So there was a sequence. So you would watch your video of Bhante reading from the suttas, and then talking about the suttas. And then you meditated before going to bed, and then you would go to bed. And I had some crazy, wild, very vivid dreams. I don't remember my dreams normally, but that week I had very vivid dreams that, you know, I don't think they really meant anything, but my mind, it was interesting how my mind was changing when I was in this meditative state for the whole week.
Wow. So amazing. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your experience. One question I do have is, how do you distinguish a thought that arises versus the thing that you're filling yourself with joy with? So like, say I'm thinking of canoeing with my family as a child, isn't that just a thought? Or is it because it's on the topic that he asked you to do that it was, do you get what I'm trying to ask? Is like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I would say the first portion of the Vipassana where you're filling yourself up with joy, it's to get to the being familiar with that feeling of joy. Once you know how to do that, you're not doing that anymore. Kind of move on to the next phase, right? Because you can quickly get yourself into this feeling of joyfulness without having the whole life review. So that was kind of just, I think that's one of those, stages. Like once, because he would ask every day how I was doing and how I was feeling, and there was a point where, okay, she is there now, where I know how to fill myself with joy. Now I can move to the next phase. And the next phase is then radiating that joy, not just to your friend, but in all directions. And so you kind of stop doing that after a while, and you just get into this feeling in your heart that you have that you can then radiate. And I reached a point where there was kind of like, for me, I would think about, well, my daughter, when she was really young, I would kiss her, and her little joke was that she'd always like turn away, and it would always make us laugh. And that was like kind of if I think that thought and remember that feeling, that's what brings me there very, very quickly. So I don't have to do the whole life review of joyful things because it's here already in my heart.
I love that. And I feel like so much of it is just like the practice and then the memory of that practice and like being able to just like tap it, turn it on, and like exercise that muscle. I did a lot of healing work with Joe Dispenza, and he talked a lot about, filling your heart with gratitude, love. And I would practice this every day for like 6 months, twice a day. And then it became like something, like you said, that I could just turn on. But I feel like right now I have not been in a regular practice of it, and I feel a bit rusty. Like it's harder for me to just like instantaneously get into that. And so I feel like maybe the energy isn't flowing as easily, and it's probably something that I need to do is slow down and start to connect to being able to do that again,
Yeah, and that's why they call it a practice, because that you're always practicing it, and it comes and it goes. And it's, I think too, like you're moving around a lot as well. I follow you on Instagram, and I know that there's been a lot of movement, and can be hard to hold these practices when there's just, it's that discombobulation I was talking about. So I think it takes more effort sometimes. And this is why I've made a commitment to myself to do a Vipassana once a year, because I think it's like a refresher. I also think every time you do it, and that was my first one. I haven't done a second one yet, but I feel like it'll be faster to pick up where I left off. I'll be able to go deeper. And you don't want to go into these things with goals. For me, it's like, I think going back to just that focused time of doing nothing but meditating is such a beautiful gift that you can give to yourself. And then it helps carry you through the rest of the year, your time.
When you say go deeper, what does that even mean?
I don't even know, right? So, Where I got stuck was the next focus of my meditation was focusing on my mind. And I really struggled with that. Like, at first I was like, I felt like my mind was up here. And I even talked to the monk about this. I was like, where is my mind? I don't know where to focus that in my meditation. And so I think the next Vipassana is kind of like, I'll get to where I was and then hopefully figure that out, as the next phase.
So cool. So cool. Well, I'll continue to follow you on your journey, and it's amazing because I feel like, by doing all these practices and these different things, it's like you embody that, and you sharing it, I'm sure is so helpful. I mean, it's inspiring to me, and definitely I'm sure going to be helpful to others as well. There's so many other things that I had written down, but I know we're at an hour, so I don't want to go for too long. I guess what I will ask you about, we'll kind of take a shift here, is just about minimalism and conscious living. I know this is something that is really important to you, and it's kind of something that I'm dappling with. And so I would love to just learn a little bit more about it from you and how you go about it, how you approach it. And then we can start wrapping up, because I know I have like so many things that I was like, oh my God, I want to ask her about this, but maybe we can have a round two at some point.
Yeah, sure. And I would love that. Well, like I mentioned, you mentioned in the introduction, we did not even sell, gave away, got rid of 90% of our possessions. So we like to say, well, we don't like to say it, we're homeless. We live in other people's homes as we travel. But it didn't, one of our guiding principles was to keep things simple. We're trying to keep life as simple as we can. And so our home in Toronto, we could have kept, and we could have, done Airbnb or rented it out. And we just wanted to keep things simple. So we did end up selling it and everything in it. And it's interesting, because we were about a month ago, my partner and I were talking about how there is literally not one thing we miss from our home. Like, there's no object or item that we wish we had kept, we wish we had brought, so it's interesting. Like, we're so attached to our things. For us, getting rid of our books was probably one of the hardest things to do. The only time I would say I got really emotional was I had a drawer that was full of themed things like New Year's Eve hats and birthday party banners and balloons and cards and wrapping paper. And that drawer really got to me because, I had a tradition with my daughter. On her birthday, I would decorate her room. So she'd get up, she'd have to walk through all these streamers and I was like, wow, it's just marked an end of an era, really. Now she's gone off to university and it's not something I would be doing anyway, but I found that very emotional. But it was with everything that left our home, we felt lighter and lighter and freer and freer. We do have a car that we kept that one of our girls has been using, but we might even sell that, because Andrew's sailing for almost a year. I'm going to be traveling. What are we going to do with the car, right? You kind of, again, it's like the house. It's like you have to take care of it, even if you're not using it. So what do we do with it? So we're kind of figuring that out. This summer, we'll have to make a decision about what we do. So that's kind of the last big thing that we own that we're thinking about. But yeah, it's been, I think we didn't want to travel and own a home. And it's just is what made sense for us. And it's been working out for us. We love that we have the freedom and flexibility to be agile. And so, for example, we've been here in Costa Rica since January. It's now April. We were supposed to go back to Canada April 1st. My energy was still very much rooted here in Costa Rica. I didn't feel ready to go back. And so we were able to extend for 2 weeks, you know, and very grateful that we have the freedom to do that.
Wow. Oh, it's so like everything you're saying is so inspirational. Because I did something very similar. You know, I sold most of my stuff, and I still have a storage unit back in New Jersey that when I go back, I'll have to like sort out. And I kept mostly like just appliances and big things, but I'm kind of in this teeter-totter of like I haven't made a decision, but I feel part of me wants to root down and have like a dwelling and have a place that I can come back to and then go and explore. But then seeing you do it without having it and feel, you know, by like extending your stay and being in one place for longer, like but that's what I'm struggling with is like, do I need to like root down? But like like you said, having a house, having the stuff, it comes with so much responsibility. And there is something really special about having just a few suitcases. And so did you sell like everything, or do you have a storage unit anywhere or nothing?
We didn't want to pay to store our stuff. So our goal was to get rid of as much as we could.
Wow.
I have some artwork that is at my mom and dad's, and they're, you know, they're displaying a lot of it. So the things that we've kept, we wanted other people to use. And my dad's a carpenter. He's made some beautiful furniture. So the dining room table and chairs has gone to a cousin. And they said, if you ever want it back, you can get it back. And because that was also very emotional for me, is what to do with the furniture my dad's made for me. There are a few pieces that are at my sister-in-law's. I do have this beautiful designer chair, the womb chair that I love, that is in, she's an architect, so it's in her architect's office. And I have a bin of work clothes, or, you know, my wedding outfits or whatever, because I live in very casual clothes now, but there are a couple of, you know, if I do ever have to speak publicly or go to something formal, a girlfriend of mine has a bin of my clothes, and she's also has full access to it. So yeah, that's how we've handled it. And we're from Canada, so we had a lot of winter clothes. We have our skis that we did hang on to. So they're, you know, a couple of things, but they're at they're shared with others in the meanwhile.
Oh, so cool. Yeah. That's kind of like all the things that I'm trying to navigate too.
Yeah.
What do you
It's
do?
hard. It's hard to make those decisions. And I think we don't know where we want to settle. We really have no idea. We thought by the spring we'd be in a position where we might buy some land somewhere or a condo somewhere, but we have no interest in doing that right now because we don't know. And you know, we do think that once we do decide to settle, probably be a tiny house.
Yeah.
You know, the startup that I'm involved with, Homes to Zero, is a net zero retrofit business, and it's to help people, you know, move their homes to net zero. And so I'd love to have a net zero off the grid type house, or net positive type house. And you don't need a lot of stuff. Like the stuff that was in my big house in Toronto is not going to make sense for whatever it is we do next, most likely. So it was okay to kind of let it all go. And it felt really good to let it all go. Yeah.
So you're so inspirational. Like as I'm listening to you, I'm like, literally, I can feel like my crown chakra just like tingling. I can feel my body tingling. So I know that whenever someone speaks like these deep truths, that's what happens in my body. And so I've just been feeling that throughout our conversation. So thank you so much for activating and turning on those codes within me, because
you're amazing, Asya. And thank you for sharing your journey. I've been so fascinated by what you're doing and following you on Instagram. And, you know, there's not a lot of people that I really follow, like where intentionally go and look at what they're doing and where they are. And your journey is one that has me captivated as well. I'm excited for what you're doing and where you're going. And, it's interesting when you're letting yourself be guided by your intuition for some divine purpose and not knowing where that's going to lead you. It's a beautiful thing to watch. And I'm following you with curiosity because I know whatever you end up doing next is going to be absolutely amazing. And, that my 2 words for this year are also trust and surrender. It's a constant reminder because sometimes you slip back into that wanting to control, and it's a constant reminder to trust that the universe has your back. Everything is unfolding as it's meant to. And don't worry, stay in that positive, high vibe place and share your light with the world. And so I'm excited for you.
Well, on that note, is there anything else like that you want to share before we wrap up this conversation? I mean, like I said, this has been so inspirational. And I feel like you did touch a lot on the things that I was curious about. And thank you, for going so deep with us here. And is there anything else that you feel you want to share?
Well, I would just add one thing and this isn't to sales at all, but I love talking to people and I love getting to know people and hearing their stories. So if anyone is listening to this and has this call to connect, I have my calendar on my website that people can just book a half an hour. And these are my favorite conversations to have because I find that there's always some sort of connection with people. And so if through my experience, if I'm able to help anyone else on their journey, I invite you to reach out. I would love to chat.
Amazing. And I will make sure to put in the show notes your contact. And if you want to say, is it, what's the name of the website? It's the Flourishment Collective, right?
It's flourishment.global is the website. And I think it has what I'm up to up on the top right corner where you can click on that, or actually throughout the website, it just says, let's chat. Okay. So you can book a half hour and happy to talk to. I've met some really interesting people this way. And it's really fun. This is the thing about the world now is it's so easy to connect with people wherever they are. And with all the traveling that I'm doing, I'm excited about connecting with people in person that I've met, on social media, through Instagram or Facebook. I have a big forest guide circle. It's forest guides, forest therapy guides all over the world. I'm looking forward to meeting them as I travel. So so that's the only thing that I wanted to add is just an invitation. Absolutely.
And I think that I hope that whoever, I feel like we're on this journey to help each other. And so, I really hope that whoever is meant to connect with you does from this conversation and is just as inspired to by you and by all that you're doing as I am. So thank you so much. And
thank you.
Just like feeling so grateful for this conversation, and we'll continue to stay in touch and hopefully our paths will cross again soon. Where are you heading next?
We're going back to Canada. I do my forest therapy work in person and some trainings there and a women's retreat. So I have a lot of activities throughout the summer. And then September, Andrew starts a sailing race from England. And then I'll likely be going to India for 3 months from there.
Oh my God. I think India is going to be magic for you. Have you been before?
No.
Oh my God.
I'll be honest, India's always scared me. I felt very overwhelmed by the density, but I've read a lot, of course, and about all of the
There's no way you
swamis and
for India.
No, that's what I hear. But I feel like it's a little bit of facing my fear, right? Because life begins at the end of your comfort zone, and so I just am going. Yeah, I'm going for it.
Oh, so amazing! I think that magic is going to unfold for you there, and you're gonna have so many revelations. Is everything. So Well, thank you again. And
Thank you. It was
in
so good
touch.
to see you again.
I
And I
love
look
you
forward to
so
catching up.
much. And
Oh,
I'm just so grateful that I'm connected to you. So
me too.